Having a system like Cvent allows us to organize all this information, keep track of the registration, message the audiences effectively so they know where to go, when to go. And then for these required sessions, we can mark them as participants.
Great events create great brands. But pulling off an event that engages, excites, and connects audiences, well, that takes a village. And we're that village. My name is Alyssa.
I'm Rachel. And I'm Felicia.
And you're listening to Great Events, the podcast for all event enthusiasts, creators, and innovators in the world of events and marketing. Hello, everyone. What has been going on in this wide world of events? My name is Alyssa, and I will be your host for this week's episode of the Great Events podcast. Now, today we're going to do something kind of fun. We're going to continue a conversation that we started a couple weeks ago now. You'll see it in a former episode on the life cycle of a student. So in order to kind of kick off this conversation, I'm going to bring back to the Great Events podcast my colleague, Stacey Sheppard, who is somewhat of a subject matter expert in the higher ed event space. And she's a solutions marketer here at Cvent, who's going to talk a little bit more about our guest speaker that we have today. Welcome back, Stacey.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. You're not going to be able to get rid of me now. Done 2 of these and it's too much fun, but thanks for having me back. And I'm really excited to continue a little bit of what we had touched on our last episode on the life cycle of student events with actually one of our customers from the University of San Francisco. So I am so excited to welcome Sam Bethel to the podcast. And I want Sam to introduce himself and share a bit of information around his role, his team, because his role is actually very unique to the higher ed space. And I think a lot of you that are potentially listening to this podcast are going to be interested in how things are set up at the University of San Francisco. Welcome, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. Alyssa, it's great to be here. So as you mentioned, my name is Sam. I work for the University of San Francisco. I'm the digital communications manager for USF. I work on a centralized marketing team, so in the Office of Marketing Communications, and I'm the system admin for Cvent at our university. So I work with clients, partners all across campus to help them launch events, make sure that their events go as planned.
It's quite a unique approach, having a bit of a centralized role within your team and your role within the university, which I do want to get into a little bit later. But as we kick off this episode and talk a little bit about your events program, Sam, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about the University of San Francisco's events program and your strategic approach to events. You know, you had mentioned to me in other conversations that you have a bit of a unique mission statement or core value that really drives how you're looking at the student perspective in a more holistic way. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, cura personalis. So this means care for the whole person. It's a Jesuit principle. University of San Francisco is a Jesuit university. It's a value principle that informs a lot of the decisions that are made at the university, including the kinds of events that we host. So we really are looking at it holistically, like you said. So we have a lot of different kinds of events on campus, which means that we have to have event tech that is really flexible and does a lot of different things well.
Yeah, you definitely need a unified approach, right? With one central team, you certainly can't, have each person be, planning or organizing in different ways. Streamlining that really just saves all of us a lot of time and headache. So tell us a little bit more about your team. You had mentioned that you sit on the marketing and communication team. How does that impact the way that you plan events across campus or even interact with other departments and other teams?
Sure. Well, because we're a centralized marketing office, we have the privilege of working with everybody on campus, from the smallest department all the way to the office of the president. So it means we're really well positioned to help folks, all across campus. So we're building registration templates, event templates. We're training users on how to use the system, how to take advantage of all the advanced registration features. And we're also building registration pages ourselves and then reviewing other pages. So, we can make sure that events are published with consistent branding, that they're streamlined so folks can register without any issues. And that really just makes sure that the folks who are registering for the event have a seamless registration process.
Yeah, you mentioned brand there, and I think that's such an important concept and something that's top of mind for really anyone who's organizing events on campus, off campus, is really just keeping that experience consistent. And you'd mentioned talking about the student experience from a much wider lens than most. And tying that back to the University of San Francisco brand, what best practices would you recommend to others as they're looking to streamline or create those same type of templates, and maybe some of the impact down the line that those make?
And I will say, in the absence of potential centralization, right? Because we know that might not always be the structure, but you might be able to fabricate that through the use of technology, right? So I'll just add that in as kind of think outside of the University of San Francisco box for a second. How can we expand on that?
I think for us, one of the motivating driving factors for adopting Cvent, we wanted to have our events, we wanted them to feel like they were a part of the same design system as the rest of the university. Specifically at USF, we wanted folks who, maybe students who are coming to the university, they're registering for orientation, to have the same experience that they will, years later as they're signing up for their alumni reunion, right? And so I think maybe at a less centralized university, really looking into event templates where the design, the branding is dialed in for your university and can be duplicated for other units on campus. It helps create that unified look and feel from event to event, regardless of who the event planner is.
I love highlighting as well that it really starts with that first interaction, that first experience, regardless of if that prospective student does decide to enroll and become a student, that regardless, their experience will be consistent from start, hopefully to finish all the way through commencement. It's great. So, we're talking a little bit about event tech. So I want to dig into a little bit more around your evaluation of event tech for your program. Can you share a little bit about what went into that process and what you were looking for when evaluating the right event tech for your university?
Certainly. So early on, some of the driving factors were creating that consistent look and feel from event to event, but then also creating some operational efficiencies. So we wanted one system that integrated with our payment gateway versus having to manually process transactions from a bunch of different systems on campus. So that was sort of the starting point, the catalyst to look for an enterprise system. We met with stakeholders all across campus to kind of get their list of requirements from the must-haves all the way to the nice-to-haves. And that list was long, as you might imagine, when you're talking to various stakeholders on campus. I think, hundreds of requirements. And so we created that list, and then we sent a request for proposals to several vendors, and we demoed a lot of different tools. We ended up, going with Cvent, obviously, in no small part because of the flexibility that the tool has. When you are onboarding an enterprise system at a university, you need to make sure that it's nimble and can be flexible and can accommodate a lot of different kinds of events. We work with so many different people, and the requests we get, there's huge variance.
I was going to say, how do you go about prioritizing those, especially because everybody's event is the most important event to them, right? They have already prioritized this. So how do you guys go about scrutinizing that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's kind of part of the fun of our job, certainly, but we really do empower our event planners on campus. So we make sure that the folks are trained, can use the system so that they can build out their registration pages, their website. We're always happy to help where needed, and we can review pages, but we really want to make sure that our event planners are empowered to build out their events directly.
Yeah, well, now I want to hear about some of these events. Do you have any examples? And I might just tee this up for you. I know we want to get into your new student and family orientation. I think it's a great example of everything that you've shared so far around how you evaluated event tech and the importance of that experience starting at an event like orientation. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that event and how these event tech has really, supported your team and supported the students and their engagement across campus.
I'm happy to give you an example or to talk about orientation. I have other examples too. Orientation is a great one though to start with because really that's, the first major interaction that our students have on campus. So it's an important one. But orientation is a multi-day event There are multiple sessions, optional sessions, required sessions. We have parents and family members who are attending. There are different sessions for that contact type. Having a system like Cvent allows us to organize all this information, keep track of the registration, message the audiences effectively so they know where to go, when to go. And then for these required sessions, we can mark them as participants. That's data that we can refer back to and make sure that they are, going through and, making sure that they're checking all of the requirements.
Are you measuring that in any way, Sam? Is there any kind of tie back to student progress or student engagement or what that means, even in terms of alumni donations? I don't know. I'm thinking about the whole life cycle, right? Do you tie that to events at all?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I think one of the most important KPIs that we take a look at is participation. Obviously, we're focused on registration numbers, certainly. But because we have the on arrival, so we can check folks in to events, we're really focused on the number of students who register, but then ultimately attend the event. And we can use that data to look at overperforming, underperforming events, and see what lessons we can glean. And that helps inform best practices. So how we can really ensure that we're getting the students who register to actually go in and participate in these events.
And active and activated within the community of the university, I assume.
Exactly. It's all about building community, and we want to make sure that we make the barrier to entry as low as possible.
I want to go back to something that you said on all your different audiences, right? And I traditionally come from a very corporate leaning event marketing background, right? But the way you were describing, even through orientation, you have all these different audiences that you're supporting, the new student, the parents, whomever, right? You're thinking about all of those unique experiences and what they need out of it. I am new to the higher ed space. This is very akin to what goes on in any traditional marketing sense, where you're thinking about optimizing experiences for a very personalized approach and what that individual needs. So just something to call out, not necessarily a question, but interesting that you're leveraging event technology in order to do that.
Yeah, certainly. And it requires, again, a flexible tool because our audiences are so different from one to the next. So it really does require that flexibility.
So nice that you're able to gather all of those requirements and see all of those audiences holistically within the space that your team sits, right? Again, to stress how a decentralized approach may not be as advantageous as it seems, while agile and nimble, speed is always good when you're decentralized. You don't necessarily have the ability for growth like you do in a centralized plan. So it's interesting.
As we continue talking through this, it's so eye-opening to hear just the impact of what one system means in terms of this data, but then in terms of activating that data, right? And it's all about that attendance. We hear this all the time, that there are actually some very measurable data points that you can tie back to whether that student or prospective student had just attended one event and the likelihood they are to become not only an engaged student, but potentially also an engaged alumni. It's so interesting to see that throughout the student journey that we're here to talk about. And I'm curious, Sam, if your team's looking at that in any way, or you can share any unique insights that you've seen from truly the data telling the story of the student journey.
Yeah, certainly. It ties into another event that I was just working on this semester that I think was a success for the university. So I worked with our Career Services Center on a career retreat at Google's office in San Francisco. And this is an event that Career Services has hosted in the past, just not in Cvent. So I met with the event planners and we talked through some pain points, and I learned that it was logistically very a difficult event for them to manage. And so by hosting the event in Cvent, we were able to address some of those issues. So we created, a capacity, automatic wait list. We sent out reminder emails. We had on-site check-in. Really took a lot of the guesswork out for the students. We met our capacity, but then we had a really high turnout rate for the event. And I think the back-end process was so much more efficient for our event planner. So it was a win all around. But, events like that help build that connection to the university. So when students are able to get a job after graduation, they have that connection to the university, and, they're more likely to, stay in touch with the university community, attend future events.
Can I ask a dumb question? Why is that so important to the university? Why is that continual connection? I think I know the obvious answer, but for those obvious, for those that are lesser obvious or lesser known to the higher ed space, what is that value to the university?
Well, we have a number of events open to alumni, and, it's about building community, engaging with our alumni. And I think that relationship is really important, but it's also about cultivating donors as well. So, the stronger that the relationship is with our students and as they become alumni, the more likely they are to continue supporting the university even after they graduate.
Got it. As I suspected, right? Follow the dollars.
It's such a unique way to create more value for your students, right? By showcasing those relationships, the way that the community can come together with the university and provide them more value as part of their education.
Yeah, exactly. That's well said.
Sam, this has been such a great conversation. I wanted to circle back to the first thing that you said. What was the ethos, the Latin verbiage that you kind of called out in the beginning? Because I feel like that's such a perfect way to wrap this conversation for us.
Yeah, cura personalis means care for the whole person.
I love that. I think that's really important, not only just in the higher ed space, but for any event that you're hosting. Think about that entire attendee experience, who they are as an individual, not just them in their business life, not just them as a student, but everything that they need from your event experience. So with that, Sam and Stacey, thank you so much for joining this week's episode of Great Events. Loved having you. And we'd be very, very excited to have you back. So always leave with an invite to come and return.
Thanks so much.
All right. We'll see you all next week. Bye. Thanks for hanging out with us on Great Events, a podcast by Cvent. If you've been enjoying our podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
And you can help fellow event professionals and marketers just like you discover great events by leaving us a rating on Apple, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform.
Stay connected with us on social media for behind-the-scenes content, updates, and some extra doses of inspiration.
Got a great story or an event to share? We want to hear from you. Find us on LinkedIn, send us a DM, or drop us a note at greatevents@cvent.com.
Big thanks to our amazing listeners, our guest speakers, and the incredible team behind the scenes. Remember, every great event begins with great people.
And that's a wrap. Keep creating, keep innovating, and keep joining us as we redefine how to make events great.